you excited? All right, good. Who's got 15? 15. All right, $25 gift card to C's Candies.
16. Okay, awesome. Way back there. Ferraro Golden Gallery Signature Collection. No clue what that is.
You're going to find out, Elaine. It's coming. Okay, who's got 17? All right, 17, you have, and I don't know what this is either, but you have 12 days of beauty.
No idea what that is. No clue. Okay, who has 18? Okay, 18 over there. Okay, I know what this is. Starbucks sleigh with coffee and mug. Woohoo!
Okay, who has 19? Wait, I can't, where? Who? I can't, who? Oh, okay, okay. $25 gift card to Starbucks.
20. Oh my gosh, okay, goodness. Snowman holiday cookie tray.
21. 21, $25 gift card to Amazon.
22. Family bingo game.
Bingo!
Okay, that's it, because I think...
No, 23.
Oh.
All right, the box. $25 gift card to Red Robin.
Okay. Okay, who's 24? This is a funny one. Okay. I have no idea what this is, but it's a Squishmallows hamburger. What does that even mean?
What's a Squishmallows hamburger?
I don't know.
Oh, 23 was the Pollux right there. Mason, raise your hand. Oh, 24 is over here. There's the Squishmallow.
Squishmallows.
There's the Squishmallow being delivered by May. Okay, that's it. That's it for the golden boxes. Are we ready, Debbie? Okay. You can continue with dinner, and we'll have dessert coming out also, but we're going to go ahead with the program. So if we can kind of have your attention, I'm going to bring up our president, Debbie Marshall. Come on up.
Thank you, Scott. I especially appreciate that you did not introduce me as a coyote or a bulldog or any of the other things you've introduced me as before. Lovingly, of course. So it is really just heartwarming to see so many of you that have been so faithful to come for so many years. And it's also encouraging to see new faces also. Tonight I want to give you a little bit of history. In a few minutes we'll jump through 30 years of ministry in a few moments, but it's important to look back at the history so you know what has led us to this point and where we're going. So for those of you that may remember, after World War II, Romania became a communist country, and in 1962, the year I was born, yep, 60 years old, the year I was born, Ceausescu became the dictator of Romania. And he was in power until 1989. And he was ruthless and crazy and a tyrant. And he wanted to impress Moscow especially. He always had a passion to be recognized by them. And so he thought one of the ways he could do it would be by increasing his population. He wanted to have a large communist population to impress the world with how spectacular communism was. He also as tyrants will, tried to control absolutely everything within the country. If you wanted to have a car, you would make an application for that. If you wanted to, of course, before the days of computers, if you wanted to have a typewriter, which was something that could reproduce printed paper, you would be allowed to have a typewriter as long as you registered it with the police, with the serial number, and every single piece of paper that was ever typed had the serial number of that typewriter, so they knew who was saying what. Every phone call was recorded. Every Facebook message, oh no, I digress, that's somebody else. We tend to think that something called cancel culture is new, but it was not. He was an expert at canceling you. If you were not part of the Communist Party, you were canceled. If you wanted any other religion besides the state religion, you were canceled. There are lessons for all of us to learn. When the Romanian people could no longer afford to eat or feed their children, they began a revolution within the country. Ceausescu, for his final 10 years, had allowed absolutely no media into the country. No newspapers, no magazines, no printed materials, no radio waves, no television, nothing was allowed in. The only thing I think we may compare it to today is perhaps North Korea. We don't really know what's going on inside that country, and do you think North Koreans really know what's going on outside of their borders? Probably not. It was the same within Romania. The unique thing about the revolution was that it was not a proxy war. It was actually started from within, Romanians rising up, the citizenry saying, we cannot resist this any longer, and they got the military on their side, and that was key to the citizenry succeeding at the revolution. Of course, the citizenry had no guns, no power, so it was crucial that the military chose the citizenry. When Romania had their revolution, Ceausescu and his wife were both executed by firing squad. You can imagine, oh my, yes, you can totally imagine if that happened in the world today, what kind of press, what kind of media to see a country leader and his wife executed. So that's what I saw on the TV. Shortly after that is when our Western media could get inside of Romania. And the first things that started coming out were the human rights violations. And it was 30 years ago. I was a much younger woman, and I was sitting on my couch doing a daily task of folding clothes before I went to bed. And a news story came on, and it was one of those that you just, you couldn't click away from it. I couldn't click away from it. And it was showing the plight of the Romanian orphans. At his fall from power, there were over 150,000 minor children in orphanages documented by the Red Cross and World Vision. And so I saw that, and I felt the Lord speaking to me and saying, you need to go and adopt a child from there. And that night I went in and woke up my husband, and I said, I think the Lord is telling me that we should adopt a baby from Romania. And since he went to the American school system, he said, where's Romania? And so the next day, we actually got out a world map, and we both looked it up, because I knew it was Eastern Bloc, but even I wasn't sure what countries bordered it. And then we began our journey. That was 1 year after the revolution. I flew on January 14th, one day before the Gulf War. My family and friends were telling me not to go because they loved me. They were scared. I was scared, but I knew what the Lord had asked me to do. My legs felt like they each weighed 100 pounds each as I said goodbye to my husband and my 3-year-old and got on the plane to go to Romania. My dad went with me because we knew it would take us about 6 weeks to process the adoption, which it did. I adopted a little girl. She was 8 months old. She's 32 now. But that experience, seeing the children that were truly like what I had seen on TV. Sometimes you look at news stories and you know that they exaggerate things. What I saw, they had not exaggerated. My daughter, at 8 months old, had never had a bath. When we brought her home, there were sores to heal from always laying in urine. And when I got on the plane to come home, my dad was by the window, my daughter in the middle, I was on the aisle, and I said to my dad, I am never going back to that hellhole. And I meant it. But I came home, and I couldn't stop thinking about those kids that were never going to get adopted, and neither could my dad. And so we started our organization to help the children that were never going to get adopted. And the decade of the 90s was critical humanitarian aid. We could not even buy with Western money powdered milk, baby formula, things that were needed at the orphanages that we had seen. So my dad would fly to Germany, buy all the things, rent vans, and we would drive it in. That was how dire it was in the early part of the 90s. And then we began to facilitate what I call professional teams, pediatric therapy teams, infant massage and stimulation teams, dental teams, optometry teams, construction teams that are skilled construction teams. They didn't come just to paint. They repaired roofs, plumbing, electricity, installed windows, toilets, sinks, all the things. In 1997 was when I had the privilege to meet Dr. Scott Packham, who had come on a dental team. So that's our connection all those years ago. The decade of the 90s was that focus. Besides Dr. Packham, is there anyone else that traveled with us and volunteered in the decade of the 90s up to the year 2000? If you're here, would you stand, please? Okay. Anita came on Scott's dental team. As we headed toward the year 2000, we'd been working diligently all year round with different orphanages, same orphanages, but having different contact with them. Like I said, the professional teams, a Christmas team, an Easter project. And in 2000, we decided to buy a camp and build a camp. We bought bare land to build a camp so that we could bring children for a week of camp out of their institution and just get them into nature and into a social situation that was different than what they experienced every other day of their life. So we began the camp program. In 2002, 20 years ago, we began a home for young women that after they finished the orphanage system at the age of 18, or if they were from very dysfunctional or impoverished situations, they could come to our home and have further education and job placement and not fall into peril. So in the decade from 2000 to 2010, we continued all those things. The professional teams, but we added lay teams, camp ministry teams that came to work with those children. If you volunteered with us from 2000 to 2010, would you stand? Justin. That's so lovely to see you still involved and still here. And maybe there was a season when you traveled with us, and now that season of traveling may not be there, but you're still here supporting, and I'm so grateful. 2010 to 2020, we continued our same programs. Things got better. I was able to see economic development in the country. I was able to see the humanitarian piece of us needing to provide heating or foods or medicines that were not specialized. We still get requests for specialized things that maybe the government budgets don't cover. But we saw progress. in the humanitarian side of things, not so much in the administrative side of things. And what I mean by that is it is still not a very sought after job to work in an orphanage. And so the staff is overwhelmed, too many children, not enough care providers. And so what we do is fill those gaps. We still are providing consistent aid and care to them, whether it's a Christmas team, an Easter team. Scott will come again this spring with the dental team, camp ministry team, all those things. So if you volunteered with us from 2010 to 2019, pre-COVID, would you please stand? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And then COVID. So 2020 was the first year that I was here to see the 4th of July since 1997 because I couldn't travel either, and neither could any of our teams. And it was hard. It was very difficult. We're still picking up the pieces from that. We have had in this last year volunteers that have been able to travel back and be there with us. And so that's exciting. And 2023, we're planning a full schedule, full steam ahead, which is how we must live our lives now, even in the uncertainty of this world. But we will not stop. We will not stop. This year, a little thing seemed to happen in the world called a war, and where we work is 7 hours from the Ukraine border. And so if you ask me what television shows I watch and that kind of thing, I won't really know what you're talking about, because mostly what I watch continually is international news. I follow it like an insane, crazy person all over the world. That's my love, that's my passion, that's what I follow is international news and politics. And so I started watching, especially with my son, he and I have that same passion, and we were watching the buildup along the border, the border, the border. And I'm like, oh man, it's coming, it's coming. And then the war started. And so in a little while, I'm going to talk to you about the refugee response that Heart of Hope was able to provide. But for now, I'm going to show you a video that is everything that we did besides refugee work from last time you were here, if you were here last fundraiser. So it will start with our Christmas response last year for the children in the placement centers. And you'll notice that we still have masks on. So if you were here last year and you contributed to Heart of Hope, you did all that. Your donations went to all of that good ministry and extending the love of Christ to those Romanian children in need. Part of what you saw there, where you saw the young women, was pictures of our young ladies that are at Home of Hope. We currently have 8 young women there. They must be over the age of 18 to come to our home, and they each come with a different story. I have girls there from various backgrounds, and tonight we're going to zoom them in, all of them, so they can say hello to you. Josh, can you zoom in our girls from Home of Hope right now? There they are. Say hi, girls. I want to see if we can hear you. Can you say hello? Them. Them.
There they are. Oh, no, they unmuted.
Rebecca, you guys are muted. You must unmute your side. Do you know how to do that? Josh, do you have us muted?
No.
Yeah. So do you see the red microphone down at the left side of your screen? You've got to unmute that.
Also, you need to talk to the conference camera there, or else I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? I guess my camera's here.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Yay.
No, they did it again.
Okay.
They hit it again.
Say hello again, one more time.
Hello.
Good. Okay, I'd like to start with Rebecca. Can you wave your hand, Rebecca, so that our crowd knows? Rebecca is the administrator at the Home of Hope, and she once was a girl that was in our home. And Rebecca is the baby of 11 children, and she came to us simply after she'd graduated from high school, but she was in a situation where she could not, her family could not afford for her to have food or a place to stay to go to college. So that's why she came to our home. And after graduating with a degree in English, German, and French, she went to work for a German logistics company. But then in 2019, she came back and is now administrating our home, helping young women that are once where she was. So we now have 8 young women, and what I've done is I've asked each of them if they would say their name and then say what they are studying. So we'll go around and come back, okay? Christina, we'll start with you and we'll come back to you.
All right. Well, hello. My name is Cristina, and I am studying in my master's degree. I'm studying leadership and organizational management, business administration, I would say.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rebecca and I'm studying pedagogy.
That's like tutoring or teaching small children.
Hi, I'm Diana, and I'm studying physical education.
To be a PE teacher.
Hello, my name is Madalena, and I study communication and relations.
Public relations and communication.
Hello, my name is Melania, and I studying nursing.
Nursing.
Hello, my name is Lizu, and I study nursing.
Nursing also.
Hello, my name is Magda, and I studying pedagogy.
Also teaching young children.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I'm studying nursing.
That's Sarah, and she's also studying nursing to become a nurse. Okay. We don't have time tonight for me to tell you all of their individual stories, but I do want to tell you one story and talk to Christina. Christina came to us, like many of our girls do, by a recommendation for somebody that knows about our home and that knows about serious girls. Our resources are limited. I take girls into our program that are serious about their future. I have very strict rules, and I will put you out if you are not serious about your education and about our program. The girls we have now are all serious. We have this photo of Christina here. The upper right corner is her graduation in June. She graduated with a really easy degree in English and German literature. And then, like she said, she decided to go take her master's degree, and so she's doing that right now. Of the 20 years that we've been taking girls, Christina has a unique story. It's not unique in the part that where her parents were divorced. What is unique is that her mother has a gambling addiction, and it is an addiction that constantly had the family in shambles or being evicted and different things like that. Christina has her younger brother there that you'll see next to her by her side, Dragos, who still lives with Christina's mom. Okay, let's go back to the Zoom with Christina so I can talk to her. Christina, and Christina knows that I asked her if she would share her story tonight. So Christina, would you just share why and how you came to Home of Hope?
Sure. Well, I was living alone, I would say, with a friend of mine when I turned 14, and I finished high school here in Sibiu. And after that, I wanted to go farther with my education, and I needed a place to stay. And that's because I really wanted to do something more with my life, and I wanted to finish a college. And that's how I came here at the House of Hope. And I also heard about you from another girl that was already living here. So that's how I heard about you. Yeah, well, I came here because my father and my mother, they couldn't provide for me, and they couldn't really understand why I wanted to do a college, or why I wanted to do my education, as they didn't have any school. And that's how I wanted to do things differently and to do something more, I would say.
So in some of the photographs or the slideshow that you saw, when we had COVID and nobody could travel, we still did our programs. We just had to do them with, our girls had to take the lead on that. Rebecca, our administrator, had to do all the shopping for Christmas, Easter, and our girls from Home of Hope helped do all the packing and distributing because I couldn't go, the teams couldn't go. And part of their expectation of being at our home is that they will volunteer when we need them, and they all gladly do. And Christina, you have volunteered many times at camp working with the kids and also distributing aid and Christmas and Easter and other things. Could you just share, I don't know, what your experience has been in working with the kids from the orphanages?
Yes. Well, I volunteered for the kids in different contexts, I would say. We would help them for the Eastern program or the Christmas program or in the summer. And the experiences are different depending on the context, but their joy is the same. Like, they would be so grateful just being there and just knowing that somebody cares. And I think it's very important to have a heart for that. And I wanted to give to them the same thing that I received. So it was more like receiving and then giving. Yeah, pay forward what you already have.
I showed them a picture, a collage that I put together of a few photographs of you, and Dragos is in that collage. And I've asked Christina's permission to tell you a little bit about that situation. So like I mentioned, her mom has a gambling addiction, and often they lose a place to stay, a place to live. Last year, before Christina would go to do her own studies, she would go to wherever they were living to make sure that he would get up and go to school, and then she would help him after school. In September, I remember we were talking, and they'd been put out of their last place, and it was raining with all their possessions on the street. And at that time, Christina and I talked, what to do? Do you call Child Protective Services and put them in an orphanage? Do you just keep helping? We chose the path, she chose the path to keep helping as she can and as we can. Christina, will you share a little bit? I don't know what's happened, if they are still in the same place since we last talked, or what's the situation now for you and for Dragos?
Yes. Well, they still live in the same place they lived last month, which is something new. Yeah. Well, that's because my brother, I have 2 younger brothers, and one of them is 18 and he started a job, so that's how he can provide for that place, because my mom wouldn't. Yeah, well, this is something that happens every month, I would say. But I try to help Dragos. Most of the time when he has homework, I try to take him out of that environment, I would say, and he comes to homophobe, and I try to do things differently with him, to see that things can be different.
And he is seeing that. He is seeing that his sister can come out of that and make a better choice, and work hard and make herself a better life, and still have a heart to take care of him. And we're so proud of you.
Thank you.
Would you share what you're going to do when you finish your master's? What's your dream? What do you want to do?
I want to help people. I try to use a thing that I already have in me. As I said, with the children from the orphanage, to pay forward what I have. And that's what I want to do. I want to try to help people to get a job in any field, but I think that my heart belongs with the children, so I think I will hope to work in that area.
Okay. I wish we had time tonight to tell you all their stories, but we don't. So thank you, girls. They got up at 5 o'clock to talk to us. It's currently 6:30 there tomorrow morning, so thank you. You can go back and have a nap before you go to
Thank
church.
you.
Have a nap.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, now we must leave that lovely place and switch gears. And I'm going to talk to you about our refugee response this year. When I saw what was coming and I heard those first days of war, I called an emergency board meeting with our board and I said, we have an empty camp. We are 7 hours from the border. What should we do? And it was unanimous. We will take refugees. I feel in many ways like the good, the bad, the struggles, the blood, sweat, and tears of the last 30 years prepared us for this. Thankfully, we were able to make a quick and easy transition to be able to begin taking refugees right away. I know how much food to order, I know where to buy it, I know how to get things ready, I know how to facilitate and take care of people, and on and on. And the Lord brought us refugees. It's gonna be a little bit like home movie slides tonight, but I want you to know where your money went and who you helped for refugees this year. Josh, will you put up the refugee slides? I'm not much of a person that wears flags. You would never see either flag in my bio or anything like that. But for 4th of July this year, I did put on my American Ukrainian flag to wear with the 4 17-year-old boys that were refugees that we had. So all the refugees that came to us were mothers with their children. Men from 18 to 60 were not allowed to leave the country. We did have 3 older men, grandfathers, come also, but other than that, it was women and children. Next. Lady is Alla, and she came with her 3-year-old son. She met some of our young ladies from Home of Hope, and I was explaining to her the program at Home of Hope, and she just began crying. And she said, "That was me. That was me. My parents never let me go," or she didn't have a dad. "My mom did not let me go past the 8th grade. She thought I would be fine just working in the fields. I never had an education, but I know I'm smart enough, and I could have." And she loved the girls from Home of Hope and what we're providing for them. Next. Here's some pictures of us taking them into the city on the right, on your left, and on the right is the Vladimir family. The young lady with the Levi's sweatshirt on, Katya. When the refugees came, most of them came with just what bags they could carry in their hands. All of our refugees, except for one, did not have cars, driver's licenses. Most of our refugees are from the eastern side of Ukraine, the very poor parts of Ukraine, and so they came. The first Sunday we were going to take them to church, we'd ask Katya, "Come on up and sit in the front." And she said, no, I might get shot. That was still in her head. And only after that I learned that the first bus that they got on to leave Ukraine, the driver was shot in the head. And they had to escape off of that and get somewhere onto another bus to get out of Ukraine. Next slide. Lena and her children there. I don't know a lot about their situation. But after being in this business for so long, I do know that this was probably some of the most peaceful and good moments that this little family had. There was no communication between Lena and the children's father. He'd broken her arm. So once he'd gotten to that point of breaking her arm, you can imagine what other abuse had happened before then. When she was probably the saddest refugee that came, and to see her come out of walking with her head down, shoulders down, barely making eye contact, to where she is now, having a job for the first time in her life, providing for her family, and I don't think they're going back. All my other refugees are waiting for that peace agreement, waiting for their ability to go back home. I'm not sure that they will be going back. And she has lovely children. Vova, the oldest, was a soccer star in his high school. And that was his dream, his ticket, his way out of whatever situation they were in, was he was going to be a soccer player. He came as an angry young man to my camp. But we built a bridge. We built a bridge when I had to be very direct with him about behavior. We built a bridge when I had to tell him that his behavior could have his entire family put out of my camp if he didn't straighten up. We built a bridge. I held him as he sobbed about losing his dream and the war and other things. And we barely can communicate, only through a translator. And we'll get to that part later. Next. So, Vika and her son played soccer with Vova, and Vika was going to stick it out until the shelling got closer to where she lived. And Vova, the soccer player, said to his colleague, "Tell your mom to come to Camp of the Good Shepherd. It's safe here. These are good people. You can come here. You can find shelter here. Come here." So that is how they came to us. Next slide. So, taking care of the whole person. We brought barbers and hairdressers to camp to take care of our refugees. We have pets for the kids because pet therapy is awesome for kids. Next slide. Mr. Anatoly. Mr. Anatoly, you see him holding chickens. He'd been asking me for chickens, and finally in June I bought him chickens. I bought him 15 chickens, and the day I brought the chickens to the camp, he said, Debbie, I never have to go back to Ukraine now. And I said, that's all I needed was chickens. And he came with his wife and the two twin boys, his grandsons, and their daughter. And they came to camp. He could leave Ukraine because he was 73. Next slide. So the twins, this is their other set of grandparents. Mr. Nikolai, they had all left Ukraine at the same time and crossed the border, but Mr. Nikolai fell very ill when he crossed the border. So the rest of the family came to camp and they waited for Nikolai and his wife to come. Their son, the boy's father, could not escape Ukraine. Well, I got a call about Mr. Nikolai and his wife from our contact, and they said, will you take some refugees? The man has cancer. And I said, I have some contacts, and through some other contacts, I have an oncologist that will see him. So they came and they arrived at camp. What I didn't know was that nobody had told him he had cancer. So they arrived, and the first couple of days, I got all the medical records from the Romanian side of the border where the hospital had taken him in when he was ill, went over it all with our oncologist friend, and he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Our translator, Olga, and I, and the doctor called Mr. Nikolai and his wife into our little office, and I said, I have to talk to you about your health. And so it's the first time, that was the first, to tell someone you're dying of cancer. Not only was it stage 4, but the doctors gave him a month. They were in shock. He immediately began saying, I'm going back. I'm going to go back and die in my country. And his wife said, don't you remember we were hiding under the beds when bullets were flying over our bed? We're not going back. And we had days of talking and calming everyone down and providing his last care and his last season, his last few weeks. And he did pass away at Camp of the Good Shepherd, and that was the ambulance when they came to take him. His wife stayed on, and we were able to have him cremated, and she will take his ashes back to Ukraine when that time comes. So that was a very unique situation for us. Next. So Laura and Svetlana were our shortest refugees, shortest time keeping refugees. They were only with us for a few weeks right at the beginning because one of them had a contact in Germany, and they had no idea how much it would cost to get to Germany. But we helped them get to Germany, and Svetlana, the one that says girl sweatshirt thing, I remember her telling me, Debbie, I never prayed in my whole life before the war. And now I'm praying now. And we had many opportunities to share the love of Christ with these young ladies and introduce them to a Savior that can walk with them and continue with them through whatever dark days are faced ahead. And they are in Germany. Next. Nina and Tatiana. Nina was the only refugee that we had where her husband is actually in the military. And they came. And you can imagine that this is the lifeline. If she was not able to FaceTime her soldier husband every day, she was a wreck. She was a nervous wreck if there were 2 days that would go by. What's happened? What happened? What happened? She stayed with us from March until the end of June when they thought things were getting better. And then she and her daughter went back because she just could not stand being away from him anymore. So they are back in Ukraine. They intended to go back where they lived, but it was shelled. And so they ended up having to go to another town. But they're doing okay and waiting for the war to get over, or else they'll come back if it just gets too dangerous from the place that they're at now. Next. Irina and Sonia. Irina and Sonia came to us the same way that so many of ours did, got on a bus, didn't know where they were going, came, and I remember, for some reason, it seems like all our refugees kept arriving in the middle of the night, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, midnight. And I remember, and we are in the country, we are in the forest, we are on a dark, windy road. And they would come, and then they'd come into the beauty and warmth of the dining room, but for them it was still scary, very scary, without daylight to see where they were. And I remember Sonia just quietly sobbing at the table while we were getting their rooms ready and that kind of thing. Later, many of the refugees told me that they were afraid that they were going to be trafficked or sold for organs. And that's what was going through their head. They're in a camp in the middle of a forest where and what is going to happen to them. That is what they thought. Many of them told us that that was their biggest fear in leaving Ukraine, but it had become so dangerous and deadly around them that they were willing to take that risk to come. Next slide. So once the word got out that I was willing to take somebody with cancer, I got a call in June and said, we've got a lady that has breast cancer. Nobody will take this family. Will you take them? I said, yes, I will, because of Dr. Nick, a wonderful Christian oncologist who was willing to see her. Valentina is there. The older lady is her mother. Valentina's in the middle with her 6-year-old son. She was diagnosed in May. They're from the Donetsk, Eastern Ukraine region. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and when she went back for treatment, the doctors had fled. So she left, and she went to a church on the Romanian border, and they're the ones that contacted us. We brought her, she came to us, I think, June 23rd, 24th, and in July, we had her surgery, and next Friday will be her 8th and final round of chemotherapy. So she's an only child to her mother, and her son Ivan is her only child. Her husband is a coal miner. He's still in Ukraine. And we're walking through this cancer with them, because cancer doesn't care about war. And so that's Valentina. We have now, the first 90 days were critical days for those refugees. They were scared. They were watching the news. Maybe this is just going to be a war for 2 weeks. Maybe we'll go back next week. And then that just thought keeps going on. Now, as an outsider, you're able to look at it and go, that's not going to happen. But we couldn't talk about that because they weren't ready to accept it then. So we slowly would take them, introduce them to the city, introduce them to where the grocery stores are, introduce them to where medical care is. None of them spoke Romanian, none of them spoke English except for one. Romanians, because of past history, don't want to learn Russian. Ukrainians don't want to learn Romanian. They only speak Ukrainian or Russian, so there was this big, huge language gap and barrier. But the Lord is so good, and there's so many things that you can communicate without actual words. But he sent us an English-speaking refugee. Next slide. I forgot. Here's a picture when Dr. Scott was there in the spring, because he came to see and meet all of our refugees. And that night, he took our teenagers to the center and our kids to the center so that they could get a break from the parents, and the parents could get a break from the teenagers. So they had pizza. Next. This was Easter Sunday, a nice, beautiful picnic, just trying to do normal things. Next. Some more of our kids with the dogs and things we have. You'll notice a man there in on a motorcycle. There's always an interesting day at camp, and I stayed at camp all summer this year. I lived there, and one night at 10:30, I could hear the dogs going crazy and somebody knocking on the gate, and I'm like, what the heck? Refugees, because they don't speak Romanian, and they're still getting used to everything. They did not want to stay alone. So either I or a staff member or a volunteer had to stay there. So I lived there all summer with them. And I went to the gate, and there was a man on a motorcycle with his wife, and he said, I looked on Google Maps, and this said this is a camp. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it is. And they were traveling, they'd gone to Turkey for vacation, and they were on their way back to Poland, and they were exhausted. And I said, come on in. And he said, we'll just sleep on the grass. And I'm like, no, you're not going to sleep on the grass. I have a little bed that you can, we have a room you can sleep in. And the next morning, they were so grateful to have had that opportunity and to meet our refugees. And so he took his motorcycle out, and he gave all the kids at camp a motorcycle ride around the camp. Yeah. So that was just a little story. Next. Yeah, that was some, we had 3 American volunteers that came to help this summer. They're on one side of that picture. Okay, keep going. That was my last day when I was there in August before I came back, and I bought the ladies I bought all the moms bathrobes, and I said, that's your warm hug from me until I come back. And when I left, I was there in the spring, and I had to come back to the States for the month of May. And when I left then, I said, I hope I don't see you when I come back, because we were all hoping the war would end. And then when I left this time, I said, I hope I don't see you when I come back, but here's a bathrobe and a hug from us. And so that was that picture. Next. Olga and her 3 children. She bought Sasha some hamsters this summer just for fun to have at camp. But Olga is our only refugee that had a university degree and that had a driver's license and spoke English. And I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the Lord sent her to us so she could translate. She translated everything from when I had to talk about cancer to when we had to make doctor appointments, when I had to answer all the refugee questions. She just translated everything day after day after day as I was making decisions and plans and things like that. So we're going to zoom in Olga now from Romania, so you can hear directly from her. Olga, can you hear me? I cannot hear you. Now we hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Olga,
Hi.
Could you hear me talking about the refugees? Did you hear that part?
Yes.
Okay. So then you know that I did not tell your story. So I would like them to hear directly from you how it is that you came to Camp of the Good Shepherd.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My story began when we decided to leave our country, and it was a very difficult decision because I didn't want to leave actually, because I knew it was my country, it's my land, and why should I go somewhere? Why should I flee? But the decision came when it became very, very dangerous for my children, and I realized it when something terrible happened to some of our neighbors. The shrapnel hit the street, and a lot of people were injured, and some of them were without legs and got into hospital. So it was terrible, and my husband said, look, it could happen to our children. So we decided to go, and that night when we stayed, the last night, it was the worst night in my life, I think, because everything that we went through during that month that we stayed at home was horrible, because we saw explosions and it was so loud, and the sirens every day, and we didn't have electricity for a long period of time. There was no heat, no water, So we survived somehow, but that night was the most horrible one for my family. And there was an explosion very close to our house. We saw that. We saw the fire. My youngest daughter screamed. She was crying, and we were saying literally goodbye to each other, hugging and kissing, because we thought that was the end. I thought the roof was gonna fall on our heads, and that was it. So, but thank God it didn't happen. And early in the morning at 6 a.m., we left our house. And I was heartbroken, of course, but I knew it was for safety for my kids. So we drove for a long time, and then the next day at 1 a.m. we crossed the border, and there were some volunteers who said, "You know where you want to go?" We said no. Then we followed some of them, and they brought us to the church. It was like a transition, a temporary shelter. And then again, they asked us, "Do you know where you want to stay?" And, you know, we were in shock, and it was difficult to think where we want to go. We just wanted to run away from this war. So they made a call and said, "Do you want to go to this camp?" And there were some refugees there, children, teenagers, the age of your children. It would be fun. Everything is there. So we didn't know, and it was just, okay, we'll go. So we drove 7 more hours, and we ended up in this beautiful place. So we didn't know. I didn't know Debbie. I didn't know the place. It was like going, to nowhere. But I was, surprised, pleasantly surprised what I saw, because it was a welcoming meeting when I saw Debbie, and she was so friendly, with an open heart, and so kind. So we ended up with this beautiful camp. There were people, refugees, and they welcomed us. So it was a comforting feeling. And everything was there in the camp for us to come down, to know that we are safe. We had food, we had heat, we had light, because we were in the dark, and Heart of Hope was like light for us. And there was a lot of help for us. Physical, materialistic, or, help for our souls. And I'm very grateful that I met Debbie, and, God brought us to this camp, to her foundation. And I'm very grateful to all the people who helped us, because that's all that we needed, that help, And we were, in this camp, we were like in God's hands. And speaking about their chickens, we had this joke, like, Debbie, we are the chickens, and Debbie is our, mother chicken who took care of us. So I remember those days when we all came, it was dark times, we were all in our thoughts and our sorrow, and it was really difficult for us. But over the time, we were taken care of, and we kind of, blossomed, and we all changed, and now we smile, and now we're a little bit happier than we were before. And we have this hope in our hearts that the war will be finished, and we will all go back home, and we'll be safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Olga.
you so much for everything you gave us, and thank you everyone for helping us, because it really matters. It does.
So when I had put the plea out, I had calculated in my head that we probably need about $60,000 to get through our first 90 days. But the Lord allowed us to take care of the refugees from March until October. And we have been transitioning as they had grown, as they had matured, as they had learned, they all began to transition to the city. So camp is about 45 minutes on a normal day to the city, and at least one person in each family, we were able to get jobs, we were able to get places for them to live, all of them except for my lady with breast cancer. We have not been able to find a place yet that will accept her. There have been some unfortunate things that happened in the city with where some people now do not want to rent to Ukrainians. And so we've been turned down 14 times so far. And so unless anybody has an extra $150,000 to give me that I can buy an apartment for transitioning our refugees or my girls from Home of Hope, we're still looking for a place to rent for Valentina. And she needs to be closer to the hospital. And so that's a prayer request, is to find that place. Olga was there translating when we were sitting across the table, and Valentina's mom, Ludmila, who had been pretty reserved lady and pretty reserved from me, although smiling. And one day, Olga, you'll probably remember this, Ludmila said, "You know, Debbie, I grew up during the Cold War." And I said, "Me too, Red Dawn, I remember." And she said, "I never met an American until I came here." And she said, "You're nothing like what I thought Americans were." And I was like, I'm not really sure what that meant, in which way, but I know she meant it as a compliment. And they were all just so afraid. But they found hope and comfort at camp, and I continually reminded them, even when it was time for those that wanted to choose to go back to Ukraine, or as we've transitioned them to the city and to jobs, to remind them, look where God brought you. You didn't know where you were going, you were just running for your lives, and He had His hand on you. And He will still have His hand on you tomorrow and the next day. In July, Olga and I were at camp, and when bad things happen, many times the refugees would text me a picture, even though like from one building to the next building. And I remember when Olga's children's school was bombed, and then Olga's university was bombed. And those things just kept bringing back those memories and that crisis. 2 weeks ago, we had a fundraiser up in Vancouver, very small. I had like 60 people there. And I had Olga on the video chat to talk to them and tell her story. And I went home, and I got home, and at 11:05, I got a text from Olga, and her apartment was bombed 2 weeks ago. Olga, I hope it's okay I shared that story. I didn't ask your permission.
Yes.
And so then we start talking in the middle of the night. So it's still going on for our refugees. Her husband was not at their apartment, so he was not hurt, but the apartment is gone. It's destroyed. It's destroyed. And so it's just another loss for Olga and so many of our refugees as long as this war goes on. So anyway, Olga, thank you for sharing your story. I'll see you next weekend. I go back next weekend, so I'll see you.
I love you. Bye.
I know, Americans, it's 9 o'clock, so I'll get off of here, but there was just so much I wanted to share with you, and to thank you that those of you that have given for so long and been faithful for so long, for both the Romanian children that are still there and the young women that still need our help, but also the privilege this year to serve those running and escaping from the war. And so thank you. Thank you sincerely so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. So I just have some final remarks. We're gonna wrap this up. It was good to see Olga on there and the girls. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. In 1992, Roxanne and I visited Romania for the first time, and it really was a country on its knees, like Debbie described. And for decades, they'd been sold on a lie that the only thing that was going to take care of them was the government. And when that government collapsed, from their point of view, there was nowhere to turn. And at that time, hundreds of ministries, hundreds of charities from the world began relief efforts in Romania. The idea of selfless giving was a completely foreign concept to Romanians at that time. That idea was stolen by the communists. But slowly over time, they've learned how to take care of others. I really believe that people didn't know real selfless love until Jesus was born. And I think that it's the love of Jesus through all of you, through all the volunteers over the past few decades has been a model for many Romanians to change their hearts, to change their culture. And we've seen this in these 30 years. We've seen it a lot in the last 10 years. And I think of my friend Dr. Anka, who's an oral surgeon now, who's volunteered to take care of the Ukrainians countless times with no cost. I think of Andrea, who you met a few years ago, who used to assist our dental teams. She's now an oral surgeon too, and I heard from her a couple weeks ago. She and her husband are thinking about being missionaries in Uzbekistan. She was at Home of Hope also. She was one of our girls at Home of Hope. I think of Rebecca, who you saw here, who's now our administrator at Home of Hope, who was one of the girls that was in our program there. I think of Geetza and Maria. I think you met a couple of years ago, two kids that grew up in the orphanage and came to our summer camps, met, got married, and now run their own ministry where they do their own Christmas programs and their own Easter programs modeled right after Heart of Hope. And so when the Ukrainians needed a place to go, many Romanians welcomed them into their homes, into their country. I had a chance when I was there to actually meet with the regional governor who came to our camp and visited. He came as a model. He wanted to see what was going on. But we have a friend that works with the governor. His name is Doreen, and I asked him about the Romanians' response, and he's called it a beautiful surprise. He said, we never saw this coming. We didn't know they would react this way. So that happened, this unexpected thing has happened, and then they're tucked away at the end of that long, windy road in a beautiful valley in Transylvania was our camp at Lotrioara, once again, a place of refuge and safety. These are all long-term fruits of consistency. And all you people coming for 20 years and the volunteers for 20, 30 years, this is what happens when you're engaged for that long somewhere. I want to read it again in Galatians 6:9. Let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And there's been some challenges, but here we are. So your donations tonight will go straight to the ministries you saw presented tonight. Volunteers pay for their own travel, your dinner's covered, all that stuff. None of this stuff happens without you. This is like at least 40% of our yearly budget comes from this. So it is critical. So you have your donation sheet. All you got to do is, I think you have your donation sheets, yes? Whatever you want to give at the end of the night, you write a number and then you put a whole bunch of zeros next to it. Whatever you want to give at the end of the night, you just write it on there and just add it up for us. And whatever your total is, and just drop it off at the table on the way out. I want to thank Debbie for being here and for all she does. I want to thank Heather and Gilda at the table back there with their hard work. They got this down to a science now. We got Ryan and Josh on the audio visual over here, did a great job. Thank Tom Lynch for the great music. Roxanne for the centerpieces. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but thank all of you for being here again. It's nice to have a big crowd back again. So that's going to wrap up our evening. And whoa. Who? Oh, goodbye to the live stream. All of you looking at live stream. Good night. I don't think the girls are still there, but I'm going to invite up Mike McQuillan just to close us out with a prayer. And then you're free to mill about or leave or whatever you'd like to do. What about what? Those, if you won silent auction, they delivered to your table what you won. If you didn't get it, you didn't win it. And they're in the envelopes. Did you guys get them? You see what I'm talking about? Yeah. So whatever you won at the silent auction is in the envelope, and then you add on to that. Everybody got them? Good. Raise your hand. Did you get envelopes? Yes. Okay. Good. This is our board member, Mike McQuillan. He's going to close us in prayer.
I just wanted to add, for those of you who have not been to Romania, the camp of the Good Shepherd is down at least 2 miles of unpaved bad road in the middle of nowhere.
It just got paved.
It's paved? Oh, no. It used to be a horrible trip. So, anyway, let's thank the Lord for tonight. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this gathering, for the people who have come and have supported, some for many years, some for the first time tonight, but all involved in this ministry in Romania to touch the lives of people who, through no fault of their own, have either nothing or very little, who have great needs, and you've given us the ability and the talents and as I was saying, the persistence to make this happen. So thank you, Lord. Bless the people who have come tonight and the contributions they've given. Multiply the money so that it goes further and further. And we ask that you would give us safe travel home. Amen.
Thanks, Mike. And one last thing, thank you to Las Posas staff. You guys are really good about clearing all those dishes without making a lot of noise. That's a skill. Thank you very much. So good night, everybody. Thank you again for coming. We really appreciate it.